Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered, the podcast that takes the mystery out of commercial real estate and makes it accessible for everyone. I'm Caleb David, a broker, investor, and community builder with over a decade of experience helping businesses and individuals bring their visions to life. Here we break down the market, share expert insights, and talk about the opportunities that commercial real estate creates for businesses and communities alike. No fluff, no gatekeeping, just real, unfiltered conversations that empower you to navigate the space with confidence. So whether you're an investor, a business owner, or simply curious about commercial real estate, welcome. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered, where we are all about creating space and building community. And today, our guest is doing just that. In the times that we're in right now, I felt like this podcast needed to be pushed to the top of the list so that we can talk about something that's going on within our communities. And if it's not going on within our communities, then we need to find communities that this is happening with and find ways to get involved. And so today, I've got Patience Kabwasa with me. She's Executive Director of Food to Power. It's a Colorado Springs nonprofit advancing food justice through food rescue, urban farming, and community advocacy. Under her leadership, the organization serves over 35,000 residents annually and recovers more than 400,000 pounds of food each year. A respected community leader, Patience has secured major regional grants and serves on several nonprofit boards, including Citizens Project. Patience, my friend, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Absolutely. I'm excited to just chop it up with you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Patience and I met through the Governor's Fellowship. Even though we lived in the same town, we became friends and started working together through the Colorado Governor's Fellowship a few years ago. And I've just been so incredibly impressed by her work. But Patience, can we just jump in and let's talk about food insecurity and food deserts? There's a difference there. And this is your world. You see it. It's not just numbers on a screen. Like these are people that you're seeing every single day that are struggling with these issues. So can you maybe explain a little bit about food deserts versus food insecurity?
Yeah. Thanks, Caleb, for having me on. I'm honored to have this conversation with you. So I think when we explain the difference, it's, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense
Right.
because it follows trends of other things, right? Like when you think about a term like food desert, and I had an indigenous friend some years ago explain to me, deserts, our people have been sustained by deserts for generations, right? And we know how to navigate the desert in order to feed ourselves sovereignly.
Yeah.
So it's not like just this natural occurring phenomenon that happens. It is the patterns of disinvestment that have followed things like redlining. So race is inclusive of how people are accessing food. And so when you look at areas of town that are experiencing life expectancy differences that in some cases almost a generation.
Wow.
Yeah. And then drill in further and you see there's not access to a grocery store within a 3 mile radius, or the grocery store might be a convenience store. And so when you layer on top of that transportation, housing costs, income, access to educational opportunities that affect income, all of those things layered, people are choosing their food after they've covered things like the rent, getting to where they need to be if they have a job, all the things. And so then if you're not able to travel within relative walking distance
Yeah.
or some kind of public transportation access to get fresh food, it's going to affect what you eat. And food security was different than hunger's natural occurring thing that our all of us experience, right? If you haven't eaten for a few hours, you're hungry. And food security is knowing what you are going to be able to eat from meal to meal consistently. So
Yeah.
you're not worried about what you're going to go home and cook for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
That's on the bottom of your, because it's just on autopilot.
Yeah.
Some people's experience is not that. And they make do with what is available or what they have, but really thinking in terms of the separation, it's just, it's
Mhm.
all these other things that are
Yeah.
attached to how people and why people are accessing food.
Yeah. So what you mentioned a convenience store, and I know, but there's also fast food, right?
Yeah,
And so in talking about not just the access, but the quality of the food, and how do you see that affecting communities? Obviously, shorter
yeah,
lifespans, But how else do you see that impacting families?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because it is very labeled, right? So the opposite of strongly what some food justice advocates refer to as food apartheid,
Mm,
or the more academic term of food desert, versus on the other side of that, you have a food swamp,
yeah.
which is just
Hmm.
layered with fast food and convenience stores, but there still is no fresh food grocery
Right.
store within proximity. And so when you're thinking about what the things that you can access, at a convenience store, there's not a whole lot of like fresh food in there.
Right.
It's convenient, right? So it's
Correct.
a lot of highly processed foods, high calorie foods, but not necessarily nutritionally dense. And you got to eat. And so in some cases, like I said, if you're a mom and you have some kids in tow and you're relying on public transportation, and one of those fast food joints or convenience stores is on the bus line, it makes sense. It's cost effective for you
Right.
and it's time efficient. Yeah, that is something to think about in terms of development and what neighborhoods look like and what is included in those neighborhoods and what people
Yeah.
need to thrive in their neighborhoods.
Yeah. So let me ask, because I want to jump into that in just a minute, but I would love to hear from you. What does food justice look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's inclusive of all the things that we just mentioned. Like, how is food economy serving folks
Yeah.
who are closest to the issue? Is there ways for procurement? Are we looking at land access and people being able to own land? And when they own land, are they able to produce on it and share the market and have it reciprocal? What is the knowledge that is gatekept or needs to be transferred or reclaimed? And how can people thrive at a place that allows them to choose what they want to eat when they want to
Yeah.
eat it and have it accessible?
Yeah. You'd mentioned a little bit about disinvestment earlier, and that makes me now think about the opposite of the investment. And most investors are looking for return on investment. And I want people just minds to shift from ROI in dollars into ROI in healthier communities. And so, what role can real estate professionals and developers play in ensuring food access when they're developing communities or they find a community that is a food desert?
Yeah, I would say who's at the table when those decisions are being made? Who is planning and with what perspective
Yeah.
is being planned when you're thinking about building neighborhoods, building communities, and making sure that the folks that are currently living in those areas are included in that conversation
Yeah.
in a way that helps shape the development. I think one good example in town is what Solid Rock CDC is doing, and in their development and creating pipelines for entrepreneurship and affecting income while thinking about a market that would serve the community, or in coalition with the Southeast Food Coalition, a farmers market that happens over the season. And there's different vendors there that are more reflective of the surrounding community that's making food more accessible. One thing I would love to see is that if you are developing a neighborhood or community, you know, what gate keeps the assurance that there is going to be a food market in a ratio to the population that lives
Yeah.
there? That should
Yeah.
absolutely be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, there's lots of different community-led things, but I think that the developers and investors and people in real estate really need to start opening their eyes to this as a need because as people get healthier, the neighborhoods come back, right? Like it's just
Right.
not your typical gentrification that's pushing those people out of their own neighborhoods and pricing them out. But like in your experience of you've done a lot of community work, how do you build sustainable community programs in neighborhoods that are experiencing this economic transition or gentrification?
Yeah, I think, wow. So the communities that we are uplifting in this conversation, and the communities I've seen and been a part of the entire time I've lived in Colorado Springs, going on 26 years now.
Yeah,
I This isn't new. Trying to figure out how to be resilient and resourceful with less is what folks do all day, every day, making the best or doing the best to advocate for different conditions. And I think trying to just be connected, I think is the first thing, is building communities, building a team of folks, and I don't know if team is the right word, but just people you're in relationship with,
Yeah.
that this is not just something you do, but it's a part of your life. It's you're doing it because you want your family to thrive and you want your neighbor's family to thrive, and you're building relationships and community around that. And when less is present, folks are stepping up to
Mm.
fill in the gaps the best way they can, it feels even if it feels unsustainable. Because you look at alleviating, I guess, if you want to alleviate hunger or you want to alleviate food security, we have to, it's connected to all these other things. So it's not an amount of
Yeah.
pantries that is going to solve this problem. It's
Yeah.
figuring out why folks are in that line in the first place, and
Yeah.
it follows a disparate wealth gap.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about food justice, but then you also mentioned food charity. Like what does it mean to practice food justice versus food charity?
Yeah, I think food justice is focused on systems change and food charity on the right now need. And I want to be absolutely clear that both are needed. There are thousands of people showing up in lines every single day where that box of food or bag of food or whatever it looks like at that particular pantry literally does mean the difference between dinner or not tonight.
Mm.
That is important. That's important to families, seniors, folks trying to feed. So it's both, but also looking at the systems change in the long term to, think about how we are developing an economy that's inclusive of folks in a way that does look at why people are in those lines. And they're in those lines because, and I think I want to just back up and say that it is, I think, a myth that it's just folks who are down and out or houseless or on welfare, all the things. People with government jobs are
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
to food banks. People who are working two jobs are coming to food banks. They're
Yeah.
still not able to make ends meet between the month, even with a job. So it's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
someone, and that actually has been continuing to grow.
Yeah.
Food access and food justice and food sovereignty and security, all those things were present before even 2020. But
Yeah.
just being able to, that as that is a marker in time, being able to see that it's only increased. The number of people needing food pantry or food bank services has increased, and that
Yeah.
follows inflation at the grocery store, coupled with all the other things that we talked about.
Yeah, and honestly, that resounds with me, and I think it's really important for that to be stated because, and I actually did a post a couple of weeks ago on social media of me and my kids when we first moved to Colorado, and I was working a full-time job, but I couldn't afford to feed my family. I was making $8 an hour, working 60 hours a week,
Right.
and that was the first time because I had that mindset. It's people that just don't want to work that are getting SNAP benefits or going to the pantries or whatever. But until I experienced it for myself and this issue became humanized in my world, and I had to go get food stamps and to make that transition from being on that to where you've got that food security when you get a better job or you make more money, like that's still a hard bridge to jump over. It's
Absolutely.
scary. It is like
Absolutely.
it's a risk and it's not a perfect system, but until you've been there, you can't have empathy. And so I think it's why it's so important the work that Food to Power and that you're doing and the solutions that you've created. So I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the programs Food to Power has and how they impact the community.
Yeah, we are an urban farm in the hillside community, and we have programs in food access, food education and advocacy, and food production, which includes growing food. And we are actually picking up food scraps, turning it into compost. And then we partner with some different farmers and ranchers in the community to supplement livestock feed, which just puts better proteins into the community. We also create compost, which feeds our soil and our plants and our bodies, and also mitigates food scraps and waste that produce lots of methane gas from going to the landfill, that also affect, from an environmental justice perspective, also affect usually the same communities through air quality, etc. So
Yeah.
regenerating that and turning it into soil that then feeds our plants and our bodies is important. So our food access is a no cost grocery program. that happens 2 times a week inside of Food to Power, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 2. And that really looks like us recovering mostly fresh and perishable foods
Mm.
and distributing those to the in a direct redistribution model, getting those out to communities
Yeah.
within a few hours so that folks are able to get the meats, the proteins, the fresh produce. We also, during the growing season, so from May until October, we partner with the Southeast Food Coalition and have a SNAP supported market there where we sell some of our produce at an affordable price and make it more accessible. And we do take SNAP benefits, and then our education. So we have run youth programs called FLY, Food Systems Leadership for Youth, which are just really 8 weeks over the summer. High school students who are learning about seed time and harvest and how to organize in their community using food. They cook together. They have garden beds that are dedicated to their learning. They're growing together. They're building community together, and they're asking critical questions and developing final projects during that time. And they get paid to do it. And yeah, so it's a crash course in working to inspire youth in food systems work and really looking at the future of our food system and who is leading it.
Yeah.
And we advocate also politically for policy that affects how people are eating. For instance, healthy school meals for all, LL and the Kroger and the Safeway merger, which, we see what happens when grocery stores close in the
Yeah.
community. It just exasperates this issue, which is like
Yes. Yes.
preventing the mergers from becoming so big that
Yeah.
like it gets condensed like that because real people are experiencing the consequences
Yeah.
of that kind of development. And then we're growing food on a quarter acre and 25 to 27 different varieties of crops. And like I said, we have a membership food scrap service that anyone can sign up for. We will either hook you up with a drop off station that's near you. We can residentially pick up your food scraps or commercially, and then we gather those and turn them into compost.
That's amazing. And there's so many, and just your setup is just it's actually one of the most beautiful sites I think, in
Mm.
Colorado Springs.
Wow.
And you guys
Wow.
have,
Thank you.
yeah, it's this area that has been so affected, but yet it's still such a beautiful and vibrant. The views from your building is just absolutely incredible. And having firsthand seen how you interact with the community, your staff interacts with the
Mm.
community is just, it makes me feel like, oh my gosh, this is the way it's supposed to be. Because,
Mm.
yeah, it's the food insecurity that's bringing people there. But it's like in those moments when you get to just like be human, right? And connect with the earth and just seeing the kitchens that you've set up and it's beautiful. And I think what I also love about it is the amount of dignity that is bestowed to your clients who come and the people that you impact. That's something that I think is very important in the nonprofit sector because I think a lot of times charities views as here you go, here you go. That's why I love the distinction between food justice and food charity and knowing that there's space for both of those things and a need for both of them. But just how would, if someone's here local Colorado Springs or nearby, what are some opportunities that they have to connect, to donate? Because I think so often, like in this last month, we've just been in shock at how many people are being affected and seeing the food banks running out of food. There's times where it makes you feel like I can't do anything. I'm paralyzed. But I want to
Right.
break that myth down, at least for
Uh,
our community here in the Colorado Springs area. Like, how can people get involved in this ongoing and generative work?
Absolutely. We have lots of opportunities given we're about to approach the holidays, and we've all heard in the news what's just happening with SNAP benefits, not just with the shutdown, but long term with the passing of HR1 and just what that's going to mean for folks. And I'm only prefacing this to paint a picture
Yeah,
and dovetail off your story earlier about being on SNAP benefits, right? So
yeah,
SNAP is about $2.03 per person per meal. And to have that cut back 25 to $100 is like going to be hugely effective of what people can buy.
yeah,
And there's a couple of things are happening right now. The Men's Exchange is actually doing a best dressed calendar that they do every year in Colorado Springs, and those calendars are on sale. You can reach out to James Proby, he can get you hooked up. or visit the men's exchange. But all of the proceeds from those calendar purchases over this holiday season will benefit Food to Power. So that's one way that people can donate if they would like to, or they can donate to us directly at foodtopowerco.org. And when you go to our website, there is lots of information on what it looks like to be in volunteer and get you set up with training and when those volunteer opportunities are. We always post those on our website during the farming season. We gather volunteers every Saturday. Cost Grocery is happening all months of the year. And so that's another way to volunteer, with whether that mean a food rescue shift or food recovery shift or volunteering in the actual pantry.
Yeah.
Both are helpful and both are needed. We also, if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram and our website, we are partnering with some mycology stewards in our community who are doing some food drives of fresh food, turkeys, hams,
Awesome.
some fresh produce for folks to just make that a little, this season, a little lighter, and not,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to worry about how you're
Yeah.
going to gather with family and what you're going to eat when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you seen the impact of food to power within the neighborhood? How have you seen that stabilize, and what are some of the fruits of your labor have you been able to witness?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen is just really building community and connection and working towards not just like transactional
Mhm.
relationship, but really becoming a community staple. Is that Food to Power is a place that folks love to be. We did our reach not just in the building, but with all
Yeah,
of our tentacles of grocery programs, did reach over 35,000 people last year.
amazing.
And definitely a need. And we love to build community. I think this has just been an incredible time because we have been affected by some of the funding cuts and
Mhm.
needing to, structure in some ways that have affected some programs just because of capacity, but really seeing our volunteers just step up and do everything and and just want to be involved and support and help us get through a time that feels just a little pressurized and help us during this time because this is what I'm like, I'm saying this to everyone right now. Check in on folks who work in a
Yeah,
pantry. Like they have not stopped since 2020, right?
yeah,
Food banks they have not stopped, and the need has just continued to increase. And they're doing it with less resource, and they're doing
mhm.
it because they love people and they fundamentally believe that people should just have access to food. And
Yeah,
I know that a lot of our community feels the same way. And yeah, I would just say check in. And how have I seen it change things? I think that it just builds connection and
yeah,
community resilience and neighborhood programs that are closer to where people are and really reflective of folks' desires. I'm glad that you commented on the building because that just didn't just happen. That
right.
took years of talking to people and really trying to build a space that reflects light and is has just a fresh feeling to it when
Yeah,
you walk in the building, and just a space that folks feel welcomed in.
yeah,
And by and large, just heard from many people over the last decade that really the biggest thing they wanted is a thriving market or a
yeah,
thriving place to access fresh food in Hillside. And nobody's looking for handouts. They want to be a part
right.
of the work. And yeah, I really it just claiming a community space in a
Yeah,
neighborhood like you said that is ripe for gentrification because of its proximity to downtown, but
yeah,
really working hard to create a space for folks in Hillside, but not just Hillside, wider Southeast and the city. We have people from all across the city that come to Food to Power. And so I really think that it just is a really great connector,
yeah,
is what I've seen over the last 3 years since the building's been there.
yeah. I can personally say it each time I've walked in the building, you just walk in, you're just like, oh,
Mm.
it feels safe. It feels that, like you said, welcoming. It doesn't feel judgmental or like so many of those spaces can feel that way. And what you and your leadership in Food to Power has created is just this safe, like almost holy space
Oh, wow. Thank
that
you.
I just is so needed in our community and this time, the compassion, the empathy. And so I encourage folks, if you're in Colorado, not just Colorado Springs, but any listener that's out there, real estate professionals, this is a way that you can get involved. If you don't live here, please donate, to Food to Power. The work that they're doing is just absolutely necessary and beautiful. And if you are local, join one of these one of these teams or come and volunteer, I think that this is a place that I can fully endorse and just know with confidence that people who give their time and their money, that it is truly making an impact. And so thank you, Patience, for being with us on the show. I know there's probably a lot more we could dive into, but I just wanted to have an intro to our community about this and find organizations like Food to Power in your areas as well. And if
Absolutely.
there isn't one, start one.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
thank you all. Patience, thank you again for being such an amazing friend and guest.
Oh, thank you, Caleb. It was great talking with you, and I look forward to doing it soon again.
Awesome. And we will make sure that all of you guys could listening can access Food to Power's contact information in the show notes when it comes out. Be listening soon and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. This is a message that very few people fully understand or even begin to understand. So please share, comment, and we will see you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. I hope you found value in today's conversation and feel more confident about navigating the world of commercial real estate. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. You can connect with me, Caleb David, and the team at David Commercial Real Estate. Just check the show notes for more information. Thanks for listening, and remember, creating space is more than just real estate. It's about building community. See you next time.